R-E-N is her name. Resnick is a special diet chef, food writer, and certified nutritionist who develops accessible farm-to-table recipes and creates indulgent, seemingly normal food out of impeccably clean, whole food ingredients. She has cooked for celebrities that include Pink, World Cup winner Vincent Kompany, the game author Neil Strauss, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Full House, Fuller House creator, producer Jeff Franklin. Ariane has been featured in media such as Cosmopolitan, CBS, The Doctors, ABC News, Forbes, Shape, Star, Huffington Post, Refinery 29, Men's Fitness, and Food Network's Chopped. So she's going to come on up. Thank you. And I just need to remind everybody, no videotaping, live streaming, or periscoping. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ariane Resnick, and this is how to create a non-toxic Oasis. And I always sound really nervous for the first 5 minutes or so after that will be golden. I am going to talk to you about tips and tricks to make your home into a more warm, upscale, spa-like setting with an impact environmentally that's reduced, as well as ways and things that are better for you physically and personally. Lifestyle, particularly, is not as much my background as food and nutrition, but I got into this sort of thing by being in so many homes. As a chef, my work has mostly been in the private world, many of which were celebrities, so I've been in all kinds of really, really nice houses, mansions, and gotten to see what it's like to live opulently. And because so many of those people have so much money, they're able to do things in incredibly forward-thinking, non-toxic ways. I've also been in many normal homes of regular people doing nutrition and wellness consults. So I've seen the struggles that people have trying to make their environments better for themselves and their bodies while not having tons of money. And it often ends up this really kind of unpleasant, health foodie beige experience. And that's something that I really strive to stay away from in what I do. My purpose is very much to help people feel better, and I tend to do that through food. The way I do that through food is by creating food that tastes good, not that tastes healthy. So I think the same thing about your environment, that you want it to be warm and inviting and friendly and nice, and not necessarily, unless it's your thing, smell like patchouli and sage. So there are going to be a variety of ideas that are, for the most part, inexpensive, low in labor, and create a better space for you. The only note I have before beginning is that a lot of these ideas involve essential oils, and that's something that you have to be very, very cautious about when it comes to pets. So in terms of dogs and cats, dogs have livers that are different than ours in that they can't process things like chocolate or onions, but they're a bit closer to humans. So most things are not much of an issue for dogs, and it's very easy to Google what is. Cats, on the other hand, have very, very different livers from people, and a lot of essential oils are quite toxic to them. Citrus oils especially, and orange oil as like the #1 on the list. So if you're doing anything that involves putting essential oils directly into the air and you have pets, it's very important to just look first, and it's an easy Google search, to ensure that the ones that you choose are safe for your pets. All of my suggestions that involve essential oils do so quite generically. I don't really suggest any specific ones because it's totally individual based on what you enjoy and what you're looking to accomplish. So that is my note about oils before beginning. And to start, salt lamps. This is a way to make a warm, glowing, wonderful environment. They cost about $20 for the just lumps of rock, and about $30 for ones that are sculpted into a particular shape. They make a warm, inviting, wonderful glow. This is my entryway, where there is one in the entryway that you see into my place. I have at least one in every room. Unfortunately, the most interesting thing about salt lamps is how untrue their health claims are. It's something that's actually on the boxes, that they emit ions to transform positive ions into negative ions, having an air purifying effect. They claim that they're as effective as air purifiers. So when I initially chose them as one of my topics, I had not ever bothered to research it because you figure if it's on the box, it must mean something. But thankfully, I knew enough to research it before telling anyone else to do it. And there's absolutely no science behind them. The types of ions that salt lamps emit are minimal in terms of the negative ions. And what they're purported to be useful for, like seasonal affective disorder, they aren't even the right types of ions to be able to have an impact on that. So they're a really lovely option as a light. They're warm, they're glowing, they're inexpensive. It's basically salt with enough space carved out of it for a little tiny light bulb. And in my experience of having been a fan of them for a good number of years now, I leave them on 24/7 year-round, and a light bulb lasts about a year each. So they're a very low electricity option, and they create a space. Everyone almost who comes into my home says right off the bat, it's so warm, it's so cozy. And I credit that completely with the salt lamps. So those are a wonderful way to bring a great feel into your home in a way that is just using a pretty unlimited natural resource and that takes very little in terms of environmental impact. Body scrubs are a personal way to give yourself a spa-like feel, and we unfortunately don't think nearly enough about what we put on our bodies, especially if what we're purchasing is made with natural ingredients. We assume something says a sugar scrub or a salt scrub, hey, that's a great thing. But what we don't think about is the quality of those ingredients. So it's very, very easy to create your own with ingredients that you know and trust. And if you think about it, for the most part, you're probably not consuming genetically modified sugar. So why would you want to rub it all over your body? Your skin is, of course, your largest organ and is incredibly porous. Also, the oils in body scrubs tend to be super cheap, generic vegetable oil. So you're generally rubbing genetically modified soybean and corn oil all over your bodies, and you're paying a lot of money to do that. Body scrubs are really easy to make and really quick, and they last indefinitely. This is one that I keep in the shower. I always add coffee because it makes such a different experience than a straight one, and I am a fan of coffee, but you don't have to. The upside of it is that in addition to the great smell, it has a constricting effect. So it temporarily, and by temporarily I mean temporarily, reduces the appearance of cellulite. Meaning you get out of the shower and you're really happy with things, and then you forget about it at some point during the day and everything's back to normal the next day. No big deal. I really enjoy for these scents like the ones shown here, cinnamon and cedarwood, because they're very gender neutral. I think that we've done way too much in the body care world with focusing on women, when in reality everyone has bodies and everyone wants their bodies to feel good and to have something luxurious. So I like to do things that really work for anyone when given the option. And this is also a lot of these really make nice gifts that people are somewhat fooled by how it took you like $1 in 5 minutes. Gem elixirs. This is a super hippie term for a super hippie thing that I am the first one to say does not have any sort of scientific backing because no one bothers to study these things. There's no money to be made from this, from the government or from big pills. So it's a complicated term for something really, really simple, which is putting crystals in water. It's something that I absolutely love. And similar to people coming into my home and telling me that it feels warm and glowing, everyone tells me my water tastes incredible. I take a gallon jug and that has a fruit infuser. And instead of fruit or herbs, and you could add those too if you wanted, I put in rose quartz and amethyst. They always say to not do more than 3 types of crystals because it's too much conflicting energy. Personal opinion. You want to be really sure that the types of crystals you use are ones that are safe to put in water. Some crystals contain lead. So anything like pitolite or anything that's sparkly and silver is probably a terrible choice. But ones that are used in other ways that you may or may not have seen, like quartz, that are sort of known as very universally safe, are great choices. And while there is no scientific study about this, people feel good, typically, when they drink it. And that's something that is nice. It's beautiful to display. It's a conversation piece. And there's really very little maintenance involved. You just continuously refill the gallon of water. So you're always getting water when you take it out of the spout that's been in there for some amount of time, growing the power of the crystals, if you believe in such a thing. We very much acknowledge as a society that everything operates at a frequency, and that the frequency of quartz particularly is great for keeping time. We know that these things are real. We're very on the cusp of there being more, but it's not there yet. So whatever you're into really is what you want to work with, and it's a great opportunity to learn more about crystals, because typically, when so many people are having such transformational experiences with something, there is something real behind that, even if it's not currently being funded. Thank you. His work is very refuted, but again, it very much does exist. Candle holders. Another area where we tend to go wrong is with scented candles, which most people, or at least some people, thankfully by now know are incredibly toxic to be breathing and can be very endocrine disrupting. One way when you want to still have something pretty and fun is to create a very simple candle holder out of very inexpensive, easy ingredients. These are all made from things that were in my pantry, hanging out for too long. As you know about beans, when you go to cook them 3 years later, they don't tend to cook as well. So this is a very simple and inexpensive way to not have to throw out some old stuff that lasts indefinitely. As you burn the candle, you can see from this one, because these melt, I had these outside and they melted a little, it just melts into it, and then you end up with a kind of layered white wax and dry goods effect that looks just as lovely. So easy, you just use any jars you have laying around, any kind of votive candle, and you put in any kind of dry goods that are obviously not flammable. No, it's a replacement for scented candles, or for a candle that looks really pretty because it came with great colors and some lovely embellishments. It's more an option. It doesn't have a scent to it. You would add essential oils to create a scent. It's just an option to have something pretty that is less toxic. The candles themselves are as good as the candles you choose. And again, any questions at any time is all good. Repurposed focus pieces. This is kind of a designy term, the repurposing idea. It's exactly what it sounds like, where you take something that has one purpose and you create a new life for it by doing something else with it. It's something that you can do so much around a single thing. This is one side of my living room. And on the wall, in the middle between the tapestries, is a rug that my father made in the 1960s by hand in a college class. I've ended up creating the decor theme for my entire home, this part of it, out of that one piece. If this had been used as a rug, it would be long since done and gone, because how long can things last with people stepping all over them? I grew up with this in my bedroom because my parents had it on the wall, so it's just this incredible nostalgic homey thing to me, and I love the colors, and it's something that I've carried with me everywhere I've lived in my many years of adulthood, and little by little have ended up creating space around it to really highlight it on its own. So if you have something that you're worried about getting old or getting used, putting it on the wall and designing other things around it is a really nice way of preservation. And it's a really nice way of decorating without using any resources because it's something that already exists. It's a great way to think outside the box in terms of what can be decorative, because something like a rug on a wall is not particularly the kind of thing that you'd picture, but it works, and that's all that matters. And even if it doesn't work to anyone but me, that's all that matters. Air fresheners. This is another way that we tend to have way too much toxic accumulation by trying to get rid of bad smells. We're very focused as a society on making sure everything is as fresh and clean and pure and scrubbed and raw as possible. And we all know that for the most part, dirt is kind of healthy, if not very healthy. But when it comes to our homes, we have this idea of how we want them to smell. And everyone by now knows that most commercial ways of doing that are really harmful for you. Everyone knows about baking soda as a way to reduce odors, and many of us keep it in the fridge. But what people don't realize is how easy it is to make an air freshener that will last for many, many months out of just baking soda and essential oils. You need something to make it so that the baking soda itself doesn't clump up over time. I use dried lemon peels because they smell great and they're just the right texture to be able to shake it up. But you could use anything else like rice or any other dry good that has just some amount of texture to it. And then you add essential oils to it, shake it up. You put it in a jar with cloth over the top. Obviously, you wouldn't want to seal it because then it doesn't work. This has one of the little wooden decorative things that you can buy for mason jars that are very inexpensive, but you don't even need that. It's really just having the cloth over the top. And it will give off a wonderful smell on its own without you touching it for a few months. And then after that, if you just go in and shake it up on occasion, I made this about a year ago, and I go in the bathroom and I shake it up on occasion, and it's still working. If it stops, you can always add more essential oils, because that's what's making it create the smell that it gives out. But having the baking soda alone, trapping odors, makes it a great thing. So this is a super inexpensive way to have an air freshener, and you can put, this is a 4-ounce jar, so it's a tiny little thing that you can keep in bathrooms and kitchens and bedrooms and wherever you might want to be trapping odors while giving off a smell that you enjoy. Vintage fixtures. This is a really fun one for me. We use a lot of resources in our furniture, and there are some things that you would just not want to use that's old, like a mattress or a couch. Those are really good, important to people ways to be using resources. No one's going to encourage you to get a vintage 1930s mattress. But there are lots of other things that we don't really use that much. We just keep stuff on, our fixtures. And these are great opportunities to reuse old things and to not use natural resources. These are two examples of taking old things and using them for new purposes and without having any environmental impact. This is the other side of my living room. On the right is, or is it, no, it's the right to you too. On the right is my altar. And I created this out of just a vintage cart. So it was an industrial cart that I purchased, and I put plants on it, and little by little I started putting different important pieces to me on it, and I ended up creating this altar space out of an old cart. On the left is a shelving unit made out of lockers, school lockers. It's a vintage industrial furniture company that repurposes old things, specifically out of school lockers. So all it is a collection of locker panels put together on a couple little wheels, and I use that as my bar. I did a cocktail book last year, so my bar is somewhat extensive. And then underneath, all my glasses, and on the bottom I have a few vintage games that I bought at an estate sale and a little blankie that my grandma made me. When you don't need to use something where you're putting it directly on your body, putting your clothes on it, so there's no concern for its age, it's a great opportunity to not use new resources and to instead find old things that you might have an idea for life for, and that can also have several lifetimes. Both of these things were in a previous home of mine where I didn't have enough closet space. And I used the cart as a hanger for all of my sweaters, and then I put all of my jeans and some t-shirts on the shelving unit. So they've had multiple lifetimes just since I've owned them for a number of years outside of the original lifetimes they had. And I love the idea that something like a vintage industrial cart has done all this work. And I kind of gave it this retirement to be nice and easy. Photo preservation, we don't do as much of printing pictures as we used to, but we still often have many that we would like to display, but are concerned about getting them aged further. Sunlight affects photos so much. So this is kind of weird in that it's incredibly uncommon, but it totally works, and it's really fun. You put pictures in a jar with oil. It's something that I found online a while ago. I ended up using it in a Livestrong article for unusual uses for mason jars by Googling unusual uses for mason jars after I pitched the article and then realized I had to come up with a lot of things. I have two pictures in here. The feathers is a photo that I took on a school trip to Canada when I was 12. And on the other one is my mom at a petting zoo in the 60s. So I had this picture of my mom, and I really wanted it on display, but where I wanted to put it on my mantle would get hit by sunlight, and I didn't want it to fade and get old. So you just take any cooking oil. I used olive oil for these because I liked the darker effect, and I liked how it gave it a more vintagey quality. And you can see with the feathers one where the oil stops before the very top of the jar because innately the photo will raise, it will float. So if it's a little bit too big, I could have cut that off, but I thought it looked cool, so I kept it. This lasts as long as the oil lasts, which at room temperature, when you're not ever going to be consuming it, is pretty indefinitely. You put a photo in there, and you put the lid on with the oil, and that's all that's needed. And it's a really neat type of decoration that enables you to keep photos around without worrying about them aging so much because they're protected by that layer of oil, so there's no direct sunlight getting to it. Upcycling. This is another buzzy decor word, and it's a very simple process of taking something that is no longer needed or wanted, and rather than recycling it for resources to be used to make it into something new, you repurpose it by changing it in some way. And this is my one example that I personally did not make or have anything to do with, but that I think is a really incredible example of that. So this is a lamp that I bought for myself as a 40th birthday present, made out of an old flute on a piece of wood from the flea market. I bought it from the person who made it. One side is a close-up of it, and the other side is its placement in my bedroom. The act of purchasing something from the person who made it is very, very similar to going to a farmer's market and purchasing produce from the person who grew it. It turns into an incredibly personal experience. When you have a hand-on-hand and an interaction with the person who created the food that you're going to put into your body, you feel so differently about the food that you put in your body. It becomes so much more personal. It becomes so much more spiritual and so much more powerful. Same thing for the things that you put on your walls. Anytime you have the opportunity to not take something out of a box made in China is a great opportunity. And things like flea markets that we don't really think of as being anything upscale in any way can have some really incredible finds from people who this is their livelihood and this is what they do. So this woman specifically makes lamps out of vintage pieces. She had old blenders and fans and movie reels and all kinds of stuff. And this was a flute that was like 100 years old. And similar to my enjoyment of seeing a cart and thinking about its life before me, I have a flute that was played by who knows how many musicians throughout who knows how many years. And I've given it new life and a great retirement. Delicate keepsakes. So we spend so much money on funny little tchotchke items that we fill our shelves with. And this is a very simple way of not buying anything in order to have something else that you put on your shelves. So this is an empty bottle of my favorite whiskey, filled with the petals of a flower. That was the first flower my girlfriend gave me. It's cute, it's sentimental, it's super simple, and it doesn't involve buying anything. You take things that you want to preserve, that you want to keep safe. A flower is not something that's really easy to hold on to forever. And you put it in something else that you enjoy. I love the bottle, it's got a great shape. I put it on the shelf. I didn't have to buy a little tchotchke item. That means nothing to me. I instead have something that every time I look at, I have really warm and wonderful memories of. Stovetop potpourri. Potpourri is another example, like scented candles, of where we tend to go wrong, and there aren't that many natural options for these days. It's a way to make a room smell great, somewhat temporarily, and the way you do it for the stovetop is so simple, where you just take some dry food items and you boil them in some water. If people come to your house and you've been baking cookies and the first thing they smell is cookies, they get really excited. Sometimes you want your house to smell like cookies and you don't want to bother baking cookies, because it's also about the experience of things. And there are so many things that we can satisfy with our senses outside of the one they were intended for. So having things like vanilla and cinnamon boiling in water on a stove, inexpensive, very little time, very little effort, makes your whole home smell fun and wonderful. This example is a holiday one that was dried cranberry based. Dried cranberries, dried orange peels, and some cinnamon sticks on the stove. The reason it's in a jar is because it's really easy to do it again and again. It's not like the smell goes away once you put the ingredients in the water in the fridge. You can save it for later. So you bother going through the time spent to boil it, you let it cool, your home smells great and festive and fun in whatever way you want for a few hours. And then once it's cooled, you can put it in a jar and put it in the fridge, and a week later, just throw it on the stove and boil it again for a few minutes and relive the experience. So it's something that you can save and reuse that water, and again, your very minimal resources that were involved are still being reused, which is a great thing. A bathtub caddy. Baths are one of our top examples as a society of self-care. We're in a society where time is of the essence to so many of us so often, and baths are innately time-consuming. The whole point is that you just sit there and don't do anything. So when we take that time for ourselves, we kind of automatically feel really indulgent. There are a lot of things that you can buy these days made of plastic in order to have what you want in the bathtub accessible to you. But they can also be made with wood. So this is something that a friend of mine made, and it's his picture from his tub, that he put up a Facebook post of a girl saying, "Hey, make me one of these." And there were dozens of me too comments on it. And he ended up making and selling tons of them. It's a simple piece of wood that you put in front of yourself with everything you would need for your bath. They come mostly, when you buy them from the store, in plastic, but any kind of wood that can get wet or is sealed properly so that it can get wet works just as well. And this, he uses repurposed scrap wood, so no resources really involved to give yourself a very spa-like experience where you can have the focus be on, I can stay here as long as I want. I'm watching a movie, I'm reading a book, I'm having a glass of wine, I'm having a glass of water, whatever it is. You can take that focus and move it into just your enjoyment because you're not concerned with where all those things are around you, and you're not taking up any resources to do that beyond the bath water that you were using anyway. Shower steamers. So bath bombs are a big thing these days, and this is, I think, a really great idea in order to have the same effect without having to take up that time, because for the most part we shower. And we shower in 5 to 10 minutes, generally. Shower steamers are things that melt in the shower and give off a smell. When you're showering and you're in steam, your lungs are much more open. So it's a very terrible opportunity to put things that are toxic into your lungs, like a body wash that's full of terrible chemicals, because your lungs are so much more porous and opened. But it's a great opportunity to put things that are good for you into your lungs for that same reason. These are something that you can buy these days, typically by small artisans who make them, but you can also make them yourself and just pack them into molds. I made a baking soda and citric acid, which is something that's pretty easy to purchase, but that you probably do not have laying around. I certainly don't. And then you use essential oil, whatever you like the smell of, into that. So these are great for specific purposes. If you're getting a cold, or if you have a cold, using eucalyptus oil to help open up your lungs and get rid of congestion is really good. If you take showers at night and you want something to help relax, chamomile or any other calming oils, like rosemary, lavender, are wonderful for that. And if you take showers in the morning and you want something to help you wake up and be invigorated, then bright citrus-flavored citrus oils or anything that you like the smell of that makes you feel awake is good for that. So it's something that when you make a batch of these, you can take different oils and make a few different types without any extra work. This is one of my last ones, and it's super silly, but it's wonderful for entertainment. Plastic straws get such a bad rap because they are single-use plastic items that serve no purpose other than to make our drinking a little more convenient. And I don't know why, but paper straws haven't really taken off. They are inexpensive, and they are so fun. So these are 2 different smoothies that I made, and each of them has a different paper straw in them. They're so good for entertainment. Most people haven't seen them, so whether you're talking a kid's birthday party or having friends over for a dinner party or having a cocktail party, anything of the sort, I always have these out. They come in all different colors and shapes and patterns. They do not last, obviously, the way a plastic straw will, but you don't necessarily need them to. So they're great for a drink, maybe 2. You don't keep them for 6 hours because they're paper. They'll get all mushy. If you want something that works well for having people over and refilling drink after drink after drink, there are metal straws. And they are wonderful because you just put them in the dishwasher afterwards and then have them indefinitely. But these are a great idea for simple, fun ways that are unexpected, that people don't generally think of for entertainment. And then lastly, room spray. So this is something that I don't tend to do a lot myself, but I have one that someone gave me, and I thought of it for this. And when I looked it up, I discovered that there is such a thing these days as having your own signature home smell, which I had no idea was a thing. It's something that people apparently are really into, where you have the smell of your home that you've created, and you use it as a room spray, and anytime people come over, they come to know it as the smell of your home. You can't just use tap water or spring water because the oils won't really emulsify into them. You'll end up getting 1 spray of water and 1 spray of oil. But if you use vodka or witch hazel or distilled water, it's much easier for the molecules of the oil to disperse amongst the liquid, and it also lasts much better. You do essential oils per ounce of them, shake it up, and you have a room spray. So this is the #1 way you want to be cautious around pets, because you're spraying the oils directly into the air. So you want to make sure that anything that you're using works with whatever animals are in your home. Typically, people use 1 masculine scent and 1 feminine one in order to create a balanced scent. And even just reading about that, I thought it sounded incredibly ridiculous, because it's okay if you like flowers and you're not a woman, and it's okay if you like stronger tobacco-y smells and you're not a man, and that seemed really unnecessary to me. So I like the idea more of just picking a couple different scents that you enjoy and mixing them together in whatever way works for you. Sure, so a neutral oil is any oil that is not heavily flavored. An example of neutral oil would be grapeseed oil, avocado oil, algae oil, any oil that in cooking you would consider to be non-flavored. So olive oil is an example of an oil that's not neutral because it's heavily flavored. And olive oil in a body scrub is going to be really heavy. And when you get out of the shower and go to dry yourself off, you're going to feel a little greasy. Typically with a lighter, what's known culinarily as a neutral oil, they're thinner, they're less emollient. So you can use the body scrub and then rinse off and then dry yourself, and you'll feel moisturized, but you won't feel greasy.
Coconut oil, would that work?
Coconut oil would work if you create the scrub with it at exactly the right temperature. It's difficult because if the coconut oil is hot enough that it's melted, you'll probably also melt the sugar and the salt. But if it's not melted, and it's firm, you'll have a difficult time emulsifying the sugar and the salt into the coconut oil. So if you wanted to do that, you would probably want to buy what's generally considered lower quality coconut oil that's refined, that's liquid, that stays in a liquid state. So you wouldn't get all the benefits of an extra virgin raw coconut oil, but you would still get some of the benefits, and definitely more than like a grapeseed oil. Yeah, so lemon peels work with two purposes, which is that they're great for the smell, and they are great for the necessity of having something in there to help shake things up. Without the smell, you can use anything that will help shake things up, and my example was rice. Oh, sure. Other brands of oils besides doTERRA, and that doTERRA is known as a high-quality oil brand. I agree with you completely. In my experience, doTERRA oils are excellent. I personally don't like the whole multi-level marketing thing. I don't like the idea that if I want to buy something, I have to buy it through a person who gets a particular amount of money for it, and then they're trying to recruit me to do the same thing. It all feels so weird to me. I tend to use mountain rose herbs. They're all organic. They are similar quality. They do not say, the way doTERRA does, that they can be ingested. That is for their own safety. I have used both brands internally and found them to be exactly the same. The doTERRA health claim that you can use them internally is kind of a shady one that they're not really supposed to say, because technically no essential oils are considered food grade. Even if it says food grade, as far as the federal law goes, none of them are food grade. There's no such thing as a food grade essential oil. So if you want to consume them, the best you can do is purchase an organic one. Oh, so a neutral oil that won't be too heavy on your skin. Examples of that are grapeseed, avocado, algae oil, which is, I know it's available here in San Francisco, it's not nationwide. Any oil you'd use for cooking that when you go to pour it, it's a thinner oil rather than a thicker, heavier oil. Oh, you buy them? You buy them, yeah. They're in stores and online. They're in stores and they're online. Yeah, if you look up paper straws, they come in a million different types and ways. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much.